All right, Assalamu alaikum. Bismillah, we begin with Allah's name, asking for His help, for His blessings, and for His protection. Alhamdulillah, we praise Allah, we thank Him, and we glorify Him. Wassalatu wassalamu ala Rasulillah. May the blessings of God and His protection be upon His Messenger. Welcome to this webinar titled Messenger or the Messenger Muhammad. This is um, one of the topics under the theme of stories of the messengers. If you've been with me before, you know that I focus on 5 themes. We try to mix them up in the different months. So we deal with the names of God, so introducing God, how He introduced Himself. We deal with stories of the messengers, which are the most important human beings and the ones that we should take as role models. We discuss sections of the Quran, specifically virtuous chapters and passages. And we also have the theme of connecting with the Quran. And finally, the theme of prayer, specifically supplications, different supplications for different occasions, and also statements of praise and glorification of God. So those are the themes that I like to focus on. As you know, if you are part of NMA, my colleague Dr. Sajid has a regularly occurring class called Practice Makes Perfect, where the focus is Salah, the prescribed ritual devotion. Um, so I have more of a variety, I guess. With him, it's a 3-part series on a monthly basis. But for me, you notice that there's different subjects that kind of change and alternate from month to month. Last month, we had discussed the subject of the lived example of the Messenger Muhammad. And then last week, we spoke about a chapter from the Quran that was addressing the Messenger Muhammad directly, which happens to be one of the ways that the Quran is. So, the Quran being the speech of God and the final scripture, the final testament, it addresses different groups of people, and some of those addresses are towards the messengers of God. So you notice God addressing Jesus, for example. In fact, He tells us about a conversation that is going to take place with Jesus on the day of judgment. So that has not happened for us yet, but God, being the all-knowing, He knows the future and He knows the past. For Him, there is no type of time limitation. We are limited and bound by time, but God is beyond time and space. So we hear that conversation. So that's in the end of chapter number 5, known as the chapter of the Ma'idah, al-Ma'idah, which is the table spread or the meal. And that's basically a conversation that God will have with Jesus. He will ask him, "Did you tell people to take you as a god?" And Jesus will respond. So that's a sample, because again, sometimes people get confused. Well, how come God is talking to Muhammad? Well, He also talks to the other messengers. So He speaks to Abraham in the Quran. There's a conversation with Abraham. There is a conversation with Moses. In fact, Moses is known as the human that God spoke to. God spoke to Moses. So those great messengers, sometimes the conversations they had with God are included and quoted in the Quran. So today we are going to continue speaking about the Messenger Muhammad, and I've chosen a small article, hopefully we can cover it today, titled "Let's Meet Muhammad." The reason behind that is, when we speak about the messengers of God, specifically the Messenger Muhammad, but in general, the messengers of God is part of the belief system in Islam. In Islam, we have articles of faith that we must believe in. And one of those articles of faith is believing in God's messengers. So we believe in God, proper belief. We believe in the angels of God. We believe in the messengers of God. We believe in the scriptures from God. We believe in the day of judgment, the day when we will meet God. And we believe in the predestiny of God, the preordainment of God when He first created and what he decided will take place. So those are called the articles of faith. Those are the foundational beliefs in Islam. When a person embraces Islam, these are the beliefs that one must incorporate, that one must adopt. People in different faith traditions and different backgrounds, they have their own ideas and their own beliefs. One of the things that we must do as we embrace Islam is we got to change those ideas and those beliefs. So for example, if somebody believed that God had a son before Islam, once they embrace Islam, they reject that idea, they reject that belief, and they adopt the belief that says God has no children. He has no son, he has no daughter, he has no children. That's the proper belief in God. That's just one sample. Another major issue, of course, as one embraces Islam, is belief in the messengers, the appropriate belief in the messengers. So yes, a person who comes from a Christian background believes in Jesus, but their belief in Jesus is not a messenger. You know, Christianity believes that Jesus is God, or God incarnate, or the Son of God, one of three in a Trinity. So if a person is leaving Christianity, embracing Islam, then they must also leave that belief. And that's why some of us, maybe when we embrace Islam, when we were saying the statement of faith, it said, the testimony of faith was, I testify that there is only one God deserving of worship with no partners, and I testify that Muhammad is the messenger of God. And some of us had the added statement, and I testify that Jesus is the Son of God. That Jesus is the messenger of God and his servant, and the soul that he sent to Mary. So that's actually something that's said to ensure that the person has a correct belief. And that's why it's good for us to challenge some of our ideas as we enter into Islam. It makes no sense for somebody to stay the same as they were before. You have to adopt and adapt. So adopt the belief system of Islam and adapt to it accordingly. Now, I just mentioned the statement of faith. So the statement of faith is very important in today's conversation, because we make the statement of faith. A lot of people come to Islam and they know that, oh, in order for me to come to Islam, I have to say the statement of faith, what's known as the Shahada. So I say, Ashhadu an la ilaha illallah wa ashhadu anna Muhammadan Rasulullah. I testify, I bear witness that there is only one God deserving of worship, the one true God, Allah. And I testify that Muhammad is the messenger of Allah, the messenger of God. Okay, but what does this actually mean? That's why we address this slightly in the ebook that's titled The Lived Example of the Messenger of God. The lived example of the Messenger of God. Today we want to talk more about the Messenger Muhammad. So let's meet him. Okay? This is our subject for today. I'm going to share my screen. We're going to read from an article. If I can have volunteers, that would be wonderful. I know that that's confusing for some people, but if anyone would like to volunteer to read, that would be great. So if your mic is not working, you're excused. If you don't feel comfortable reading in front of others, you're excused. But if you would like to participate, this way I can take a break. And what I do when I take a break is I'll let you stop after maybe a paragraph, and then I will do some commentary and make sure that we are clear on the article. So do I have any volunteers? And if not, no problem whatsoever. So feel free, if you want to volunteer, to raise your hand. Okay, Natalie would like to read. Let me enable your mic, and then please, you can get us started. So go ahead.
Okay. Bismillah. Let's meet Muhammad, part 1 of 2. Description. Part 1 of a 2-part lesson on getting to know the man named Muhammad, peace be upon him, whose name is mentioned in the Shahada.
Okay, I want you to pause. So why is this significant? Why are we even talking about the subject? Is because this man's name is mentioned in the Shahada, which is the statement of faith that brings a person from being a non-Muslim into the fold of Islam. So it behooves us to actually know who this person is at a bare minimum, because I'm making the statement. As a new Muslim, I'm making the Shahada, right? So this is very significant. And that's why I tell people the most important thing for us to know about as we journey in Islam, before even coming to Islam and even after Islam, is God Almighty. So getting to know God properly on his terms and his conditions, and then getting to know the messenger of God properly. Because those two things represent the statement of faith. And then everything else in Islam sprouts out from the statement of faith. Everything else is going to be connected to the statement of faith. You have to know God, the lawgiver, before you know the laws of God, which are the commandments. So a lot of times people jump into Islam and they're like, oh, tell me what to do. Okay, slow down, slow down. Do you even know who's telling you what to do? Very important. The second part is getting to know the messenger of God, who is the person that represented the commandments of God and implemented them and explained them. So again, before we know the law, before we know the laws, we should know the lawgiver. And the lawgiver is God Almighty in the ultimate sense. And then he chose his messenger to communicate these laws to us. So we should know God and his messenger, and then we get acquainted with what we are asked to do. Okay? What are the prerequisites of today's conversation?
The testimony of faith.
Okay, so the first thing is, I hope everyone here has that prerequisite. You know, prerequisite is something that you should have ahead of time. Now, maybe some of us are not Muslim yet. The statement of faith, the testimony of faith, as I said it a couple of times, is to testify there's only one God, the one true God that deserves to be worshipped, and to testify that Muhammad is his messenger. That's the prerequisite. The objectives of today's class?
To come to know of the importance of the testimony of faith, to come to know the meaning of the second part of the testimony of faith.
Okay, so that's what we hope to achieve. So we ask God Almighty to enable us to attain these two objectives. What is the term that we're going to be exposed to today in Arabic?
Shahada, testimony of faith.
Okay, you may have heard me say this before. Shahada means to testify. In Arabic, when I am a witness to something, when I see something, as an actor, I am called a shahid, a shahid. And then when I testify, if I'm going to court, my testimony is called shahada. Okay? So that's why we call it the testimony of faith. I also like to call it the statement of faith, because testimony of faith may be confusing to someone who comes from another faith tradition. But if you are familiar with the church, usually go to any website of a church and it says statement of faith, basically what we believe in. And the testimony of faith is our statement of faith as Muslims. Very straightforward. Okay? Introduction.
Okay, do you want me to pass the mic to someone else or continue?
Okay, so I want to appreciate Natalie. Thank you so much. Does anyone want to volunteer? Because if not, we can just have you on the mic. But let's see. If anyone else wants to volunteer, you're free to do so. Here we go. Everett is next. So let me just enable Everett as well. So it's between you two. You'll take turns, basically.
Teamwork.
Okay.
All right. I'm at introduction?
Yes, sir.
Previously, we have discussed the meanings found in the first part of the Shahada, La ilaha illallah. In this series of lessons, we will discuss the second part, Muhammadun Rasulullah. We will come to know the man named Muhammad. May the mercy and blessings of testimony to his prophethood actually entails.
So we lost you, or I lost you at least. Can you repeat that last sentence, please?
Oh, and we will learn what bearing testimony to his prophethood actually entails.
Okay, very good. So as you notice here, the Shahada is actually spelled out in this paragraph. La ilaha illallah, which they didn't translate, but that means there is no God except the one true God, Allah. Muhammadun Rasulullah means Muhammad is the messenger of God. Whenever someone embraces Islam, this is the statement that you say, and then you continue saying this statement. This is a statement that as Muslims we constantly say on a daily basis. Okay?
All right. Who was Muhammad? May the mercy and blessings of Allah be upon him. Muhammad was born in a noble tribe of Mecca in Arabia in the year 570 CE. His ancestry traces back to Prophet Ishmael, one of the two children of Prophet Abraham. His father died before his birth, and his mother died when he was 6 years old. He was raised first by a nursemaid in the desert, as was customary in those days, then by his grandfather, and then by his uncle. As a young man, he was known to be a good man, true to his word, never known to go back on his word. At the age of 40, God chose him as a prophet, as foretold by previous prophets such as Moses and Jesus. And the Gabriel.
I think there is a missing word here. The angel Gabriel.
Okay. And the angel Gabriel brought the first revelation from God while he was meditating in the cave of Hira in Mecca. Thereafter, God sent revelations to Prophet Muhammad for a period of 23 years. This book of revelations is called the Quran, his greatest existent miracle and proof of his truthfulness.
Okay. Thank you so much. So let me just break this down a little bit, because this is a lot of information packed all at once. So who was Muhammad? Okay. Muhammad is a man who was born in a tribe in Mecca. That tribe is known as, if anyone is taking notes, which I highly recommend, I'm going to fill in some blanks for you. So, and I'm going to tell you the significance of these blanks. So, he was born in the city of Mecca. Mecca is in southwestern Arabia, which is in the southwest of the continent of Asia. So that's the geographic location. The significance of Mecca is that it was a city that was established by Abraham himself. Okay? And Mecca happens to also be a location in which there is the temple that Abraham built, known as the Kaaba. So that is talking about the location. Now we're going to zoom in from location to the people. Who did Muhammad come from? Who are his people? His people is a tribe in the city of Mecca known as the tribe of Quraysh. There is a whole chapter in the Quran titled Quraysh. Anyone know the number of that chapter? Let's see if I can have any volunteers. Do you know the number of the chapter Quraysh in the Quran? I'll make it easy on you. It's the 9th chapter from the back of the Quran, meaning the end of the Quran. So the chapter, the total number of chapters in the Quran is 114. If you go back 9, that's the number of that chapter. Who can do that math for us? 106. Okay. So chapter 106 is titled Quraysh. Quraysh is the tribe that Muhammad comes from. They are his people. Now, again, this is not just a random tribe. This is a noble tribe. We're going to learn more about them. Why were they a noble tribe? They were actually the caretakers of the temple of Abraham. So they were given special respect all over Arabia, because everyone in Arabia would come to the city of Mecca and they would perform pilgrimage there because they trace their ancestry back to Abraham. That's one of the few traditions that they kept from the time of Abraham, long ago. So what made Mecca a safe place was the existence of the temple of Abraham, known as the Kaaba, and also these people, the Quraysh, had a special status among the tribes. Arabia, if you know anything about history, was a wilderness, and it's mentioned in the Bible as a wilderness. There were a lot of tribes that would raid and attack one another for resources because resources are very scarce. There isn't any natural resources. So basically, it was the survival of the fittest. The strong survive. But the Quraysh specifically, as mentioned in the Quran, God protected them from being attacked. The reason why they were protected is because they took care of the temple of Abraham, the temple of God. So then everyone in Arabia gave them kind of like diplomatic immunity. I don't know if you're familiar with that concept. Diplomatic immunity, if you're a diplomat for a country and you go to another country, they can't prosecute you the way they prosecute their citizens. You basically are protected from the laws of their country. That's how it works. That's called diplomatic immunity. So now you have this tribe called Quraysh, a noble tribe, because they trace their ancestry back to Abraham biologically, but also they are the keepers and the protectors and the guardians of the sanctuary, the temple that Abraham built. So that's where Muhammad was born. That's the location, and that's the people. What year are we talking about? So again, historically speaking, we should get a general idea. The year 570 CE. CE is, some people say Common Era, some people say Christian Era. So CE is basically after Christ. Okay? And this is significant. There is actually a teaching of the Messenger Muhammad wherein he says that there was no messenger that was sent from God between Jesus and himself. So there was a period of no divine messenger being sent to humanity. 500 or 600 years, actually. 600 years. That's the time period. That's the gap. So far, we know the time, the place, we know the date, and we know the people. I hope everyone is following. Okay. His ancestry, so Muhammad's ancestry, naturally, since he's from the tribe of Quraysh, it goes back to Ishmael. Now, Ishmael is a character that's not really discussed much in the Christian tradition, although he's there in the Bible because he was the firstborn to Abraham. So Abraham had Ishmael first, okay? But then Ishmael basically disappears from the biblical narrative. And the focus in the biblical narrative is the second son, known as Isaac. And Isaac is the father of Jacob. Jacob is also known as Israel, and there is the 12 tribes of Israel, which are the children of Jacob. And then the rest of the story of Israel is the story of the Bible. Israel, not the country, Israel, the people, okay? There was no country called Israel. This whole concept is a modern phenomena called the nation state phenomena. So Ishmael is the ancestor of Muhammad. And Ishmael is the son of Abraham. Okay? Now here it says one of the two children of Abraham. I don't know if Abraham only had two children, but these are the two most significant children of Abraham. That's for sure. Because from them come those two lineages, the lineage of Isaac and the lineage of Ishmael. So now we're going to learn a little bit about his upbringing, okay? Muhammad was born as an orphan. His father was traveling when he was born and the father died. So Muhammad came to this world without his father being alive. Okay? His mother and father had gotten married, the mother conceived, the father was traveling, he died while traveling, so Muhammad came into this world without a father. Now, the society he was born in is a tribal society, and they basically supported one another and they took care of one another. So yes, although the father was not there, the next kin would take care of that responsibility. So the one who took care of him after his father's passing was his grandfather. Again, if you want to take notes, this is a significant figure. The grandfather is known as Abdul Muttalib. Okay? I'll type it out for you also to, actually, I'll type out those words because they are Arabic words. So I'll type out the tribe name. Quraysh is the tribe name, and you guys told me it's chapter 106, correct? Next, oh, Anahi, is there an app for the Quran? Yes, there is an app, but you can just go to Quran.com. That's a very easy one. The next name is Abdul Muttalib. That's the name of the grandfather of Muhammad. Why is he significant? Well, he's actually the one who took care of him as soon as he dies, as soon as his father dies. Also, he's the one that gave him his name. So Muhammad was not a common name, but he gave him that name. What's interesting with Abdul Muttalib also is he was the chief of Mecca. He was the chief of the tribe of Quraysh. So he had a significant role within the tribe. Okay. What else about him? He had a very significant event take place the same year that Muhammad was born in. And that year, although we just said it was the year 570, what they used to do is they didn't really use the number system for years. They would use events that take place to signify what year someone was born in or what year somebody died in. Because 570 is the Roman numbering system. But Arabia did not really follow that. Arabia has its own system. And in fact, every group of people has their own system. Why are we using 570? Because we're Western people. We're speaking English. This is the system that we are familiar with. But if you were to basically ask what year Muhammad was born in his environment, they would tell you he was born in the year of the elephant. The year of the elephant. And that is chapter 105 of the Quran, titled The Elephant. And that's why I like to connect the story to what we have in the Quran, because the main reference for the life and the ministry of Muhammad is the Quran itself. So chapter 105 speaks about the story of the elephant that came to destroy the temple, the Kaaba in Mecca. Now, it wasn't just like a random elephant. There's a longer story. The story is there was a governor in Yemen, which is southern Arabia, and he was a Christian. And he felt kind of offended that all of the people of Arabia would go to Mecca and visit this temple in Mecca and perform the pilgrimage there. He's like, I'm going to build a cathedral that's going to make people forget about this temple in Mecca. Okay? So some Arabs heard that statement and they were not happy about that. So, yes, Taima, very good. Is this the story with the birds with stones? Yes, exactly. That's the story. But I'm telling you the backdrop to that story because it doesn't mention the backdrop. It just mentions the story. And that's the importance of, again, getting the context whenever we are studying the Quran or reading the Quran, knowing a little bit of background. So actually, before we get to that, when we talked about Quraysh, I told you they had immunity. So Allah mentions this immunity in the Quran, where He says the Quraysh would travel in the summer and in the winter. The summertime, they would travel up north to Levant, the Levant region, modern day Syria and Palestine. They would travel up north because it's cooler up there. And in the winter time, they would travel south to Yemen. Okay, and they would do business because they didn't have resources. So they would go up and down. They would go north and south to do business. They were business people. They were tradesmen. And no one would attack their caravans because they were the people of Mecca. Mecca happens to be that sacred place. So anyway, this king, the governor of Yemen, gets offended that there is this temple that has all the attention. He says, I'm going to build this mighty church and cathedral, and I'm going to make people forget about Mecca. Now, some people hear about that and they get offended. So they're like, okay, we're going to go and desecrate his temple. So he builds this fancy temple, and some people decided to go and just desecrate it. They basically went and made it filthy, and they ran away. So he heard that happened. He's like, who are these people? They're like, oh, they were offended of what you said about their temple. He's like, well, I'm going to teach them a lesson. I'm going to go and destroy their temple. And basically he prepared a large army. And because, again, this is important to know, this is a historical thing. Yemen was an African colony at that time, although it's in Arabia, but there was an African kingdom in East Africa that ruled over Yemen. So they had colonized Yemen. Okay? So colonization was not always a white enterprise or a European enterprise. Colonization happened by different people all over history. So at that time, East African kingdom had colonized southern Arabia. And from East Africa, they brought elephants. Elephants were not known in Arabia. Arabia, the largest mammal they have is the camel. So now you got these elephants coming with the army, and they said, we're going to go and destroy the Kaaba. We're actually physically just going to demolish it, and we're going to use our elephants. And sure enough, they go marching, and any tribe that tried to resist them, they crushed them. The horses and the camels would see these elephants and would get terrified because, again, an elephant is huge and they've never seen it before. So anyway, the elephants keep marching all the way till Mecca. But then the elephants refused to go and demolish the Kaaba. They simply refused. Of course, because the ones in charge of them, the one in charge of the elephant is God, beyond the trainer. You know, the trainer can only do so much, but God really is in charge. And the elephants were told that this is a sacred house. Do not do this to it. So they refused to march against the Kaaba. And then God Almighty sent birds that had clay stones of fire, and they basically dropped these stones on the army from Yemen, and the army was completely destroyed, with the exception of one survivor who lived to tell the fate of the rest of the army. That event took place in the year 570. In Arabia, that year was known as the Year of the Elephant. I said that the Year of the Elephant was connected to Abdul Muttalib. How? Abdul Muttalib was the chief of Mecca. When the king came from Yemen, riding his animals, his elephants, and trying to march, he camped out right outside of Mecca, and he says, where's the chief of Mecca? I want to talk to him. So the chief of Mecca, Abdul Muttalib, the grandfather of Muhammad, comes to him and he says to him, look, you came and you took some of our property, you took some of our camels. I want you to give me back your camels, my camels. Because that was basically what they used to survive off of in the desert. So the king is like, I'm coming to destroy the temple of your ancestors, and you're asking me about camels? So Abdul Muttalib said this very famous statement. He says, I am the Lord of the camels. I own the camels. As for the temple, that's the temple of God. God is the Lord of the temple, and God will protect his house. So he gave him a warning, but the king did not take the heed. He did not take heed of that warning. And unfortunately, he caused himself destruction by trying to destroy the Kaaba. So that's the year in which Muhammad was born in, and that's the significance of Abdul Muttalib, his grandfather. Now, as the grandfather is taking care of him, at 6 years of age, his mother passes away as well. So now he's orphaned maternally and paternally. His mother passes away at 6. But before his mother passes away, he was actually taken by a wet nurse to the desert. That was the tradition of the people at that time. They would send their children from infancy out to the desert and hire a wet nurse to feed the child, to literally breastfeed the child, but also for the child to learn the proper language arts that have not been contaminated or negatively affected, for the child to breathe fresh air and to learn the different traditions of the Arabs. So how to be a shepherd and how to take care of animals and so forth. So Muhammad basically, in those first 6 years of his life, he was mostly with his wet nurse out in the desert. He would see his mom on and off, but he was mostly out there from a young age getting trained. And that was customary again. Now, his mom took him and she was traveling with him, and she also died while traveling in a journey. So his guardianship now moved from his grandfather to his uncle. And the uncle's name is Abu Talib. Okay? Abu Talib. He's also the father of a famous Muslim that will come later on in the future, known as Ali. Ali ibn Abi Talib. Literally, ibn means the son of. So Ali was the cousin of the messenger Muhammad, and he's the son of Abu Talib. Okay? So now Abu Talib becomes the guardian of Muhammad from the age of once his grandfather dies, which is at around 8. So his father dies before he's born, his mother dies when he was 6, his grandfather dies at 8, and then his uncle takes care of him from the age of 8 all the way to basically the age of 50. Now, he was no longer taking care of him as a child, but as you will learn in the story, he becomes his protector because of tribal politics, especially once he becomes a messenger and brings this new idea to the people at the time. Important to mention something about those people. Although they're the children of Abraham, they had changed the way of Abraham. They had adulterated it, added things to it, added superstitious beliefs, and basically became pagans, idol worshippers. Although Abraham is famous for destroying the idols, he basically was the father of exclusive worship of the one true God, even if he went against the whole world at the time. But through the generations, the offspring of Abraham in Arabia had deviated so much. Now, if you're familiar with the story in the Bible, you don't know much about Arabia, but you do know about Israel. Israel are the children of Abraham. They also were people who had the scripture. So they knew that there is only one true God and all the other gods are false. But because they lived among the other nations, they started being affected and influenced by the other nations, and they started developing pagan rituals and superstitious beliefs and started worshiping idols. These are the same people that are the children of Abraham. So just like the children of Israel deviated, the children of Ishmael deviated. And that's one of the reasons why God had sent them Muhammad, the final messenger. Okay? So now going back to the messenger Muhammad, but I want to check in though. I mentioned a lot of things. Is everyone following along, or did I lose you guys? Let's see who's following along, because I've said a lot. I'm lost. Oh my God. I don't blame you. Okay, hold on. Okay, so Anahi, so I know you're brand new. I know you embraced Islam today. So tell me how I can help you. I don't want to leave anyone behind. So which part got you lost exactly? Can you tell me? Or is the whole thing just completely foreign to you? You got no clue what I'm saying. Okay, so all right, you're lost. No problem. Okay, I appreciate you sharing this, but if I may request that maybe we have a consultation on the side, just so I can make it up to you, and so you're not lost. I don't want to have anyone confused, so that's not the intention here. And if I'm going too fast, I beg your pardon. So make sure you set up an appointment with me. So we have a service called consultations where you can speak to me one-on-one. So we can basically slow down the pace and you can tell me exactly where you're at. I hope that that's helpful for you. So you just contact help desk at newmuslimacademy.org and request a consultation session with me, and we can discuss the matter further. Okay, thank you so much, and I appreciate you being so so vulnerable and sharing that you're lost. I really respect that, actually. Thank you so much. Okay, so now it's gonna go very fast here. So we just spoke about his childhood. We're not really gonna get into details. As a young man, he was known to be a good person, true to his word, never known to go back on his word. This is extremely significant. So he was known as a truthful and honest person. That was his reputation. So his reputation was gold. Everyone attested to this. So he was famous among his people that this person is trustworthy, this person is honest, this person is truthful, this person never tells a lie. So he's like this all of his life. But something happens when he turns 40. 40 is the age of maturity for human beings. Before 40, we're still developing. At the age of 40 is basically the pinnacle of our lives. And then basically people start going downhill after that, physically and cognitively and so forth. But as far as maturity, mental maturity, decision making, and so forth, 40 is that age. And usually God Almighty would choose or select his messengers and let them start their ministry at the age of 40. Okay, so at the age of 40, this man, Muhammad, was chosen by God as a prophet and a messenger. This information was foretold by the previous messengers that came before, such as Moses and Jesus. So in the Quran, we have Jesus quoted saying that one of his goals in his ministry was to foretell the coming of a messenger that comes after him with the name Muhammad or the name Ahmed. How did God communicate his message with Muhammad, the man? He sent him an angel. That angel is the angel Gabriel. So this is another one of the beliefs that we mentioned earlier. In Islam, we believe that God has messengers, has angels, and these angels have different tasks. The angels' tasks are to do different things within the creation. And one of the primary tasks is to communicate the commands of God to the chosen human messengers. And the angel that's in charge of that task is known as Gabriel. He's the mightiest of the angels, and that's one of his main tasks, to communicate God's words to the messengers that God chooses from among humanity. So the angel Gabriel brought the first revelation from God. I know that the word revelation could be confusing to some because we have a book in the Bible that many people are familiar with called the Book of Revelations. So that's why I don't like this word, because it causes confusion. So the first words from God were brought by the angel Gabriel, okay? So instead of revelation, just say words. The first communication from God, okay? Muhammad at the time was in a cave. Basically, about 3 years before he received this communication from God, he would go on retreat up a mountain in the city of Mecca, which is still in existence today. And he would go into a cave and he would just worship God based on the traditions that his people had inherited from Abraham. So that's why I don't like the word meditate, because meditation is like a concept that comes from Eastern traditions like Buddhism and Hinduism, like yoga. Yoga is meditation. So he was not influenced by the Eastern tradition. He is from an Abrahamic line. So Abraham was not doing yoga. Abraham prayed to God in the physical way that we pray to God, which is standing and bowing and going down on your face. Just like the other messengers in the Bible would fall on their faces to worship God. That's the way they worshiped God, okay? So again, although we're reading this article, I have issues with certain words because I know they cause confusion. And then people think, oh, like meditation is part of Islam. No, that's from another religion, not from Islam. So anyway, he received communication from God while he was worshiping God in the cave. Now, he was worshiping God, not anticipating to be selected as a messenger. That was not his goal. He was worshiping God for his own spiritual refinement, because he actually had kept true to the ways of Abraham based on what his ancestors had inherited. He shunned the worship of idols. He never engaged with them in idol worship. He also never engaged in their other immoral behaviors, because, like I said, the people had deviated so much. They had deviated and they had brought into so many traditions that were inappropriate. So he basically would go and be reclusive. He would go on retreat by himself because he was sick and tired of the society that he was in. He was not anticipating to be selected as a messenger. But God is the one who makes these decisions, and God chose him at the age of 40. Now, what happens there is from 40 until 63, which is the year or the age in which he dies, he continues to receive instruction and words from God. That period of 23 years is known as the ministry of Muhammad. That period of 23 years is the period by which the Quran came down in bits and pieces. If you were with us in the subject where we discussed how was the Quran revealed or how was the Quran collected, that's when we discussed this issue, that the Quran came down in a period of 23 years. What is that period? That's the period where Muhammad was commissioned to be a messenger. That was his ministry period. So look why this is confusing. Look at this. This book of Revelations is called the Quran. Now, you're going to confuse this with the book of Revelations that's in the Bible, which is the final book of the Protestant Bible, at least. But that's not what we're talking about. The reason why they're choosing the word revelation is because God reveals his words to his messengers. Okay? The Quran is the greatest extent meaning altogether, the greatest miracle and proof of Muhammad's truthfulness. So the Quran's one of its purposes is to testify to the truthfulness of the messenger that brought it. That was God himself telling the people that Muhammad is truthful. So God is supporting Muhammad by way of sending him the Quran. Okay, let's read another paragraph, please.
Like all prophets before him, he was a human being chosen by God to convey his message to the creation. He ate, drank, slept, and lived like other humans. His knowledge of the future was limited to what God revealed to him. In short, he had no part to play in running the affairs of the universe. He was not divine, he is not God, and Muslims do not worship him. He was a prophet and messenger, one in a long line of prophets, including Abraham, Moses, the Hebrew prophets, and Jesus. He declared the fraternal brotherhood of all prophets. The prophets are all paternal brothers. Their mothers are different, but their religion is one.
Okay. So, like all of the prophets and the messengers of God before Muhammad, and if you've been with us whenever we mention the stories of other messengers, what is highlighted with each one of these stories is that they are human beings that were chosen by God with the defined purpose of conveying the message of God to people. So they're humans like us, chosen by God to convey the message to the people. But they were special human beings. They were the most upright human beings. They were the most moral human beings, the most ethical human beings. That's a theme that you always hear whenever Muslims talk about the messengers of God. But now we're going to mention some things here that talk about the humanness of the messenger. So he had human needs. He ate, he drank, slept, and lived like other humans. So basically, those are human needs. Those are the human experiences. He also married. He was married. That's another human need. His knowledge of the future was limited to what God revealed to him, meaning he was not fully aware of all the events that are going to happen in the future, because that is knowledge that is exclusive to God. But God told him about certain events. In fact, that's why you get the word prophet. Prophet is the one who's able to prophesy about the future. But it's not just guesswork. It's not some psychic stuff. It's not magic. It's God informing a human messenger of future events that will take place. So this is different than someone simply guessing or estimating or doing tricks like a lot of the shamans and a lot of the folk medicine folks and stuff like that, people who are involved in astrology and people who are involved in psychic predictions. That's not what the messengers of God were involved in. Okay, so the knowledge of the future was what God directly revealed to him. Okay, he had no part to play in the running of the affairs of the universe. Again, there is a typo here, meaning he's not in charge of the universe. He doesn't control the universe. Only God controls the universe. No human being does that. He was not divine. Only God is divine. Again, this is a clear Islamic mandate. He is not God. So Muhammad is not God. And Muslims do not worship him. We actually said this previously, that in Europe, people used to call Muslims Mohammedans. And we said the problem with that title is that it confuses people, because when you say Christian, it's the people who worship Christ. So when you say Mohammedan, people are going to assume it's the people who worship Muhammad. But Muslims do not worship Muhammad, whereas Christians do worship Christ. That's the problem. And that's why we have to highlight that Muslims do not worship him. Yes, we respect him, we honor him, we revere him, we love him, we follow him, but we do not worship him. He was a prophet and a messenger, one in a long line of prophets and messengers, including Abraham, Moses, the Hebrew prophets, and Jesus. So those are some of the famous names, and we've had programs about these other messengers in the past. He declared the fraternal brotherhood of all the prophets and the messengers. This is actually one of his teachings. He says the prophets are all brothers, paternal brothers. Their mothers are different, but their religion is one. Their way is one. That way is Islam. They all worshipped God, the one true God, and followed the commandments of God. So that's why they're all brothers. So they're brothers from different mothers. That's actually the statement. Brothers from different mothers. It's like a man who has multiple wives, or a man who basically was married and then his wife passed away. He married someone else and she had children with the first and with the second. The children are all siblings, but their connection is through their father, not through their mothers. So the father is one and the mothers are different. When it comes to the messengers of God, the religion is one, but their teachings may be slightly different. So they are from different mothers. Okay, now our time is up and I don't want to hold you. So what I'm going to do is we can pause here and I'm going to share this with you. Okay, I'm going to share this article with you so you can continue reading it, but I look forward to us continuing the reading together. And what I'm going to do now is stop the share, and I'm going to open it up for questions if anyone has any questions. I hope that's okay with you all. Okay. Okay, so let's see. Did I miss any questions from earlier? I don't see any questions. Any comments, any concerns, any? I saw that Taima said she didn't know about her name, so I'm just looking it up. I'm gonna give her a link about her name. So it's in the northwestern part of Arabia. Right? You're very welcome, Dr. Everett. Wa iyak. Jazakallahu khayran means may Allah reward you with goodness. So the response to that, and may Allah reward you with goodness as well. So this article is telling you a little bit about the city Taima, since we learned our sister's name. Okay. Anahi says, how can I schedule an appointment? Okay, the way you schedule an appointment, there is a link within the website, but if that's too confusing, email the following: help. So I'm going to type the email that you're going to use: help desk at newmuslimacademy.org. Okay. So I usually have availability on Wednesdays in the afternoon, California time. I don't know where you're based, but on Wednesdays, I'm available. If you can't make that time, we'll make it happen according to your schedule as well. So reach out to Help Desk and they will set you an appointment with me. Okay, let's see. Laura says, will this be continued another time? Oh, yes, I hope that it will be continued another time. This is an intro to the subject. Amanda says this has filled in some gaps. Glad to hear that. No questions from Jacqueline. Shukran, afwan. Shukran means thank you. So afwan means, basically it means pardon, or you're welcome, in a sense. Laura says a lot to take in. Yeah, I agree, a lot to take in. So next time, hopefully, we'll continue the conversation. Not next week, because next week we have another scheduled speech or topic. Michael says, was the Kaaba rebuilt ever? Yes, the Kaaba was rebuilt multiple times. Now, the elephant army did not destroy the Kaaba. The Kaaba was spared from the elephants. The Kaaba was destroyed, however, due to the elements and due to floods and due to fires throughout history. But no army, the army of the elephant did not destroy it. Also, the Kaaba has an ancient history before Abraham, actually. The Kaaba was the first temple built on earth for the worship of God. And it was built in history by the angels and by Adam, the first human being. And the messengers throughout history would perform pilgrimage to the Kaaba, to that location. Jesus, when he comes back again, will perform the pilgrimage in Mecca. Moses performed the pilgrimage there. So it's a very significant location. It was rebuilt multiple times. It's always, what's the word when you have a building and it's old, not about remodeling it, but you try to not revive it, but take care of it so it survives, it doesn't get affected. So even in our times, it's constantly maintained. They maintain it and they take care of it and they make sure if there's any damage that it gets fixed. So throughout history, it was rebuilt multiple times. That's the response to Michael. Taima says, my name is Taima Hasina Brown. That's very interesting, which means whoever named you Islamic names, although you're just been Muslim for 2 years, but they gave you Muslim names. And that's very common, especially, again, I don't want to make assumptions, but if you come from an African American background, that's very common. So African Americans, especially in the era before the civil rights movement, so before the 60s, there was the era of Black consciousness. So when the Nation of Islam came and the Moorish Science Temple came, a lot of people, so this is from the 30s, a lot of people who have African descent, they wanted to go back to their roots. And in fact, Alex Haley, the one who wrote the autobiography of Malcolm X, he is the one who produced that show called Roots. And he did his own history and roots and traced himself back to West Africa. So whenever African Americans wanted to connect with their roots, they basically would choose Muslim names, even if they were not Muslim. So that's why many African Americans will have Muslim names, even if they don't practice the religion of Islam. And then some of them, they actually have full consciousness, and then they say, you know what, we need to go back to the real religion, not just of Africa, but the religion of humanity, which is the religion of God, of Islam. So thank you for sharing that piece of information about your life with us, Sister Taima. Let's see, who else? Restoration. Yes, very good. Who said restoration? Jacqueline. Thank you for saving me, my sister. Yeah, sometimes, you know, because I'm trying to work Arabic words and try to translate, and sometimes I just forget words in English. So yeah, restoration. I think restoration is a very good word. Retrofit maybe as well. Yeah. Anahi says, do people have to have Muslim names? No, that's not a requirement. It's not a requirement to have a Muslim name. But again, our sister Taima was born with a Muslim name. She didn't have anything to do with it. Her folks named her a Muslim name. So exactly, my father was Trinidadian, so he focused on African names. Exactly. Yeah. So the people from the West Indies, Trinidad and Jamaica and stuff like that, the Caribbean in general, a lot of them are very familiar with these names because they're trying to again go back to their roots. Yeah. So people do not have to have Muslim names when they embrace Islam. So you can keep your name. Let's see, what else do we have? Michael says, thank you, great information. You're very welcome. Jacqueline wants a Muslim name now. Okay. So basically, I don't know if you all watched the course titled Intro to Islam. So that's one of the main courses we have in New Muslim Academy. And the speaker there, he actually tells us that our names are the God-given rights of our parents. So part of honoring our parents is to keep our names as they are. So we should not change our names unnecessarily. When does a person have to change their name? If the name is having a meaning that's negative or a meaning that is contrary to Islam. So for example, God forbid, but maybe your parents were wild and they named you Satan, for example, or they named you, I don't know, some Lucifer or something. Okay. So if that's the case, you definitely want to change that. That's not a praiseworthy name. But like, look, most of you here, again, like I have Michael, I have Amanda. Those names are from the Bible. So there's nothing wrong with those names. And again, it's also good for people to realize that, look, you don't have to have an Arabic name to prove your Islam, because Islam is international. It has nothing to do with Arabs specifically. Yes, the Messenger Muhammad was an Arab, and he came initially to his people in Arabia, but he did not come exclusively for the Arabs. He came for everyone, and the message is universal. So we can keep the names that our parents gave us. Now, some people still, they'll be like, you know what? I still want to have a different name. And I can understand this. So look, within the African American community, my teachers are African American. They changed their names when they came to Islam. And the reason being, especially if they came through the nation, they said, you know, these names that we have been given are slave names. Because when we came from Africa, the slave masters stripped us of our heritage, our culture, our language, our everything, and they gave us their names. So look, I can't deny that fact. So if somebody feels that way, that's why Malcolm X was X. Like in the nation, they were all known as X, and then eventually they took Arabic names. So Malcolm X is known as Al-Hajj, which is the one who went to the pilgrimage. Malik al-Shabazz, that became his Arabic name. Okay. So if someone has a legitimate reason, like they have a grievance with the name and they're like, you know what, I don't want to have a name that reminds me of this negative past, I'm going to be like, you know what, you do what you want. I'm not going to argue with you. But is it required for you to change your name? Because that's the confusion. Is some new Muslims come in and they're like, oh, I have to change my name. No. You do not have to. If you want to, you know, I can't control what you do. But I can also advise you and tell you that you don't want to burn bridges with your folks. Not everyone has the African American experience. We have people who come to Islam who are not African American. So they don't necessarily have that issue with names and their history and so forth. So every situation has a different response. We say there is no one size fits all. Um, and now, so I said, there's one way which basically gets both things together. We can kind of make an agreement, which is maybe among the Muslims. For example, Nick is saying, I get asked what is my Muslim name all the time. So that's a valid thing, that the Muslims, unfortunately, they have this notion, and that's due to them not really knowing any better, that if you convert to Islam, you must change your name. That's not usually anyone who's a scholar of Islam. That's why I'm telling you, you don't have to do it. But the common Muslim doesn't know any better. They think, oh, this person became Muslim, so they got to change their name. In fact, sometimes they'll volunteer to give you a name. They'll be like, what's your Muslim name? You're like, I don't have one. So they'll just give you one. And you get stuck with something. You're like, look, I didn't sign up for this. And that's why we tell our new Muslim brothers and sisters, please check in with someone who is learned. That's why we have the New Muslim Academy. So you can ask us, so we can advocate on your behalf, because you're kind of new and you are vulnerable in a sense. You're innocent. You think that any Muslim who says anything is honest or is truthful or is knowledgeable. They could be honest. They could be truthful. They could be sincere, but they could be sincerely wrong by being ignorant, by not being scholars. So what's the halfway point is, among Muslims, if you choose to have a name that you want to go by among the Muslims, you can do that. But with your family, with your parents, with your legally speaking, with your co-workers, go by your regular name, the name that your parents gave you. Stay with that. But you know what? I also know many non-Muslims, for one reason or the other, they're frustrated with their parents. So once they become adults, they change their names. You hear that all the time. It has nothing to do with religion. They just like want to tell their parents, forgive my language, but they want to tell their parents, screw you. You named me this, I don't want this name. Or like, I want to die. I want that identity to be dead. Of course, you guys are hearing all about that with the whole gender wars and, like people who want to be known as a different gender, different pronoun, but also a different name altogether. So you have people doing stuff like that all the time for a variety of reasons. So I would say study the matter, consult, and make sure that you're not offending your loved ones. So again, Jacqueline is sending, I think, a heart emoji type of thing. I think Jacqueline earlier is the one who wanted a name. Yeah, I'm glad I convinced you, Jacqueline. So you can have a Muslim name if you like among the Muslims, maybe an NMA or something, but don't lose your parents and your family over something like that. And, just out of experience, many times people come and they decide to do something like that prematurely, and then they start fighting unnecessary wars with their family and loved ones. So let's say, like, your folks, they named you, for example, Charles, and then you change your name to an Arabic name, and it's very difficult for them to pronounce it. And they're like, man, why are you naming yourself Abdullah? Like, I can't even say that name. It don't sound right. So like, it causes them hardship. There's no reason for that. That's not a battle you should fight. Your biggest goal should be to bring them with you to Islam. I'll give you an example. One of my colleagues, he's Latino, he's Salvadorian. So his name was Christian. His American name was Christian. So when he became Muslim, he decided to name himself Isa. So his folks had a problem with that. They're like, why are you changing your name? He's like, look, you guys named me Christian. So Isa is the name Jesus. Like, I actually now am named Jesus. So you should not be upset. So when they knew that, they're like, okay, we like that. That's not a problem. Why? Because his name honors Jesus. So they didn't know that. They thought, oh, you're just like changing who you are. You're changing your identity. So we have to be careful with our loved ones and their sensitivities. Don't do things to unnecessarily cause hardship and cause turmoil within that relationship. Okay? I hope that makes sense. Wink says, how do we get one if we do want it? How do we get one? Well, so you can basically ask and inquire. So for example, one of the things that Muslims are known for is we name our children. Basically, this is the way you want to look at it, is what are positive names in Islam? So we usually name our children after the messengers of God. If they're males, we name them after the messengers of God. And if they're females, we name them after, like Mary, the mother of Jesus, and also other righteous women in history. So also the disciples of the messenger Muhammad. So like there are so many of them and so many of their names as well that are available. Also, thank you, Jacqueline mentioned the names of Allah. So one of the things that we do as Muslims, we name our children with a name that's a complex name, a title. So like, you know, earlier I said Abdu Allah, right? Abdullah. That literally means the servant of Allah, the servant of God. So many Muslims, their name starts like this. So you have Abdullah, Abdul Rahman, the servant of the most merciful, and so forth. So all the names of God. Now that's for a male. If it's a female, then it would be Amatu, Allah. So Amatu means the female servant of God. And that's a name, that's a common name among Muslims. But again, it all depends. Sometimes a person is like, well, you know, I have a name that sounds like this in English. Is there a name that sounds like it in Arabic? And we can possibly find that. Someone may, you know, just look at the meaning behind names. You know, like Tayma earlier, for example, she didn't even know, but it's a city in northern Arabia that's known as Tayma. So it could be like somebody wants to be named Mecca or Medina. Those are names that represent the great cities, the sacred cities, and so forth. Anyway, I didn't know that we're gonna get into that. Wink says, I always loved Khadija after the Prophet's first wife. Yeah, so Khadija, of course, is one of the most important figures for us as Muslims because she was the first person to believe in the messenger Muhammad. When he came back after his initial meeting with the angel, needless to say, he was terrified and scared because he was not expecting that. And she was the one that comforted him, and she believed in him basically before he truly believed in himself being a messenger, because it was such a overwhelming experience. And she also took him to her cousin, and her cousin was a biblical scholar. He was someone who had become a Christian and was familiar with the Bible. So when she took him there, she said, why don't you tell him what you experienced? So he tells him what he experienced. It's like, that's the same messenger and the same angel that came to Moses. So basically that gave him affirmation that whatever I experience right now is not hallucination. It's actually something legitimate, and other people in history have experienced it as well. Okay, Anahi says she had another question about marriage in Islam. So again, I recommend that we take that offline, Anahi. So whenever you set up an appointment with me, we can discuss that if you have questions about it. That's not our topic for today. And also, we're really out of time. I'm just making sure that we answer any pertinent questions to today's topic. But that's a big topic, and it's something that we have a whole course about in NMA, and there's other resources about it as well. So I would definitely say, if I tell you don't change your name, I would also tell you don't rush into marriage once you become Muslim. Make sure that you study it and you understand what you're getting yourself into. Okay. Jacqueline says, I thought Jahana was cute until, well, Jahana is not an issue, but this is what's not cute, is Jahannam. If you add the am in the end, so it's not just Jahana, Jahannam, that is the name of the hellfire. So you don't want to name yourself that. Yeah, too close, definitely. May Allah protect us from the hellfire. Okay, any other questions? Let's see, did I miss anything? All right, I guess that's all the questions you guys have for me tonight. And with that, I want to thank you all for tuning in. May Allah bless you. You are very welcome. and I leave you in the protection of God. And I hope that today's conversation gets us interested in looking more into the life of the Messenger Muhammad and becoming more familiar with him. One of you, I don't mind mentioning, Sister Amanda last week actually had asked if I had any book recommendations, and I do have one on this topic. So this is the book. I'm going to drop it in the chat box. But I like you to start with articles first, and that's why I'm reading the article with you. But if you would like a short book that gets you started on the life of the Messenger Muhammad, this is one that I would recommend, so you can give it a try as well. One more time, did I share the article, today's article, with you guys? I hope I did. Let's see. I did share it. Meet Muhammad Part 1. So I'm glad I did that. Okay. So I hope that covers all the ground. Well, I guess I can share Part 2 as well if you're going to read it on your own. But as you can tell, there is so much to unpack, although the article is supposed to be brief and simple. But without commentary, you're missing out on a lot. And the fact that I can fill in the gaps for you, hopefully, makes it more enjoyable. Also, you saw that there were some typos or spelling mistakes or things that may cause confusion. That's the role of the teacher to help you with that stuff. So these two articles are like an intro, scratching the surface on the life of the Messenger Muhammad, but there is way more to it. There's more details to his life story. So I encourage you all to look into this and to invest time in getting more familiar with him, because he is the way to worshiping God on his terms and his conditions. And again, we mentioned his name in the Shahada when we embrace Islam. So it is extremely important for us to be familiar with that name. It doesn't make sense for us to just repeat a name and we got no clue who that individual is. And unfortunately, a lot of us were exposed to negative things that his enemies say about him. That's not appropriate. If I want to learn about somebody, I don't look at his worst enemies to tell me about him. If I want to talk to any of you, I would tell you, give me a reference. I hope that the reference you're going to give me is someone who has good times or good things to say about you. You don't send me someone who hates your guts, right? Like for a job, for example, right? When you send your CV, you have references, and it's usually people you've had successful personal relationship with in your job. So you say, oh, talk to my old boss. They'll vouch for me. Why? Because they saw you firsthand and they know what your strengths are and what your weaknesses are. So you always want to look at good, solid references for people. And the messengers of God are no different. That's why we say, don't listen to what the detractors say. Don't listen to what the haters say. Rather, listen to what the objective ones say. All right? With that, I will conclude because I've taken 30 minutes of your time beyond our account, beyond our time. So I apologize about that. Subhanak Allahumma wa bihamdik. Ashhadu an la ilaha illa anta astaghfiruka wa atubu ilayk. We conclude with this prayer called the prayer of seeking forgiveness at the conclusion of the gathering. God, you're far above any imperfection. We testify that you're the only one deserving of worship. We praise you, we glorify you, we thank you. We seek your forgiveness and we repent to you. I leave you all in the protection of God. Assalamu alaikum. Take care and see you next time.